I'm Kwame Alexander, and I'm a lover of words. I love words. That's what I do. That's my avocation and my vocation. It's my hobby, it's my love, it's my lifelong passion. I grew up in this household where it was all about instruction. And ultimately, it was about like how to become a better person and how to make the world better. So it was, for a kid, who cares? Who wants to deal with that? Like, I just wanted to play Atari video games. Atari is like the old school app people, kids. So, I wanted to play video games and play with my friends, but it was all about sort of learning to become a better human being. And so that was instilled in me. I was immersed in this language of literature from a very early age. We used to go to New York City every Thanksgiving to do two things. To eat dinner at Hunan Park 2 on Columbus and West 93rd. We ate Chinese food every Thanksgiving. It was our family tradition. Like, my parents were not about celebrating land being taken from native peoples. And so we didn't celebrate Thanksgiving like that, like most traditional Americans did. We went to New York to eat Chinese food. And then on Friday morning, my dad hosted an annual book fair in Harlem. And we had to work it. So this particular Thanksgiving, it was 1984, or 1986, I may be a freshman in college at Virginia Tech. We're in my dad's red Thunderbird. It's me, my sisters, we're in the back seat. My mom and my dad are in the front seat. We're driving. There's like 7 boxes of books to be sold at this book fair in the trunk. It's a huge trunk. And our suitcases are with us. Like, how did we get all that stuff in there? Anyway, so we're on the New Jersey Turnpike coming up from Virginia Beach to New York, to Harlem. And I'm asleep, my sister's asleep, my mom's asleep, and my dad's asleep, and he's driving. Next thing I hear is Al. My dad's nickname in the Air Force when he played basketball was the Big Al. Al! Everybody's eyes open. The car tumbles like 7, 11 times and lands on its top. So we're upside down. And I remember the first words out of my mouth. My dad was also a Baptist preacher. My dad did a lot of things. The first words out of my mouth were damn. I don't know if we can say that, Kennedy Center, but. And my dad said, watch your words. Are you kidding me? We're in the middle of the New Jersey Turnpike and you're focused on my words? So we all get out the car, nobody's really injured, my mom's in shock. And the next thing my dad says is, go out there, and when he says out there, he points behind our car where there's a backup of semis, trucks, cars, everybody, nobody's hit us, they're all just backed up now because we're strewed out in the middle of the road. He says, go back there and pick up all the books. So in this catastrophic moment in my life, this major accident, I am on the New Jersey Turnpike picking up books, putting them back in boxes to be sold at a book fair the next day, which we ended up doing. Heinemann is a publishing company. It's owned by, I want to say Heinemann is owned by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, which is now bought by HarperCollins. But Heinemann used to have this series called the African Writers Series. And they published writers from the continent of Africa. They published novels. They published The Healers in 2,000 Seasons by a Ghanaian author named Ayi Kwe Armah. They published Things Fall Apart by a Nigerian author named Chinua Achebe. They published a whole series of African writers. I loved those books. They were about this small. They were like $5 or $6. They were this thin, they had orange covers, and we sold those. And I remember loving those books for the packaging, the conciseness of it, the originality, the uniqueness. And it, of course, opened up this whole new world because which is what reading does, you now realize that the world is possible and the world is beyond your sort of, finite space. It's infinite. And so you begin to have this understanding of a place on the other side of the world, which I wouldn't get to visit for another 20 years. But I knew Africa, whether it be west, south, east, or north, through the literature. It's not an experience with books. This was a life. When I tell people all the time, they're like, wow, how'd you win all these awards? How'd you get so successful as an author? How'd you do all this? And I say, I believe my parents nurtured and built me to be who I am. They created me. I didn't have a choice. I love it, and my dad now wants royalty checks, but I love what I do, but they built me. I've spent my entire life trying to build avid readers, engaged writers amongst our young audiences who feel the same way about words that I did. When I got older and sort of found my way to, back to a love of literature, because I had fallen out of love with books. Like, my parents read to me constantly, bedtime, morning, breakfast. Reading was reward and punishment in my house. And I was familiar, at age 3 with Fox and Socks by Dr. Seuss, Lucille Clifton, Nikki Giovanni, Langston Hughes. Like, I grew up around these poets and these books. And then by age 11, something happened. My teachers started giving me books that I wasn't interested in. And my father started making me read his Columbia University PhD dissertations. What 11-year-old kid wants to do that? And so I fell out of love with books. And then when I was 12, we were living in Chesapeake, Virginia, and I was cleaning up our garage, which was basically my dad's library. There were these huge milk crates, these stacks of milk crates all around the garage, thousands and thousands of books. And I discovered this book one Saturday called The Greatest. The story of Muhammad Ali, his autobiography. It's 478 pages. And I could not put it down. It was brash, it was super confident, it was rhythmic, it was poetic, it was this amazing storytelling, and I could not put the book down. And I sort of realized in that moment that, wait a minute, books are cool. Books are fun, I remember that. Reading Muhammad Ali's autobiography was fun and engaging and entertaining, but it also taught me some things. And the biggest thing it taught me was, I am the greatest, not because I am better than anyone, but because no one is better than me. And so I grew up being immersed in this literature that was page turning, but it was teaching me. And so that, coupled with these parents, I was destined for a life of trying to inform and instruct through inspiration. My dad was a huge basketball star in college in the Air Force. So of course, at age 3, he was taking me on the basketball courts at Columbia University, at the playground, and letting me shoot free throws. As a 3-year-old. So like the park, the guy who manages the park, who oversaw the park, he would come out to the playground, my dad said, and said, let me lower the goal for your son. He can't make that. And of course I couldn't make it. And my dad was like, no, don't lower the goal. He doesn't know he can't make it. Basketball, sports, whether it be tennis, baseball, all the other stuff I played, they became metaphors for life for me. Motivation, grit, persistence, resilience. I've tried to use sports as a metaphor because I know it reaches kids and they get it without you having to explain it. I talked about the playground attendant wanting to lower the goal so I could shoot it. And my dad saying, no, don't lower my kid's goal. Never let anyone lower your goals. Always shoot for the sun and you will shine. You get that. If you miss enough of life's free throws, you will pay in the end. You know, it's like kids will get it. They can connect with it because, again, sports is the best metaphor for young people who either play, watch, know someone who plays, which is pretty much every kid. I think that goes back to my father giving me books of quotes and axioms to read as a kid by the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, or African Proverbs, or Bartlett's Book of Quotations. And I just always found them interesting and intriguing, saying so much in so few words, which of course is what poetry does. It's like these little nuggets, these little poetic nuggets, especially when they're done right. So I think the sport, the literature, those things mirrored each other, and I think that's why it happened in the books like that as well. I find that what I write is going to convey some sort of message. I'm going to teach something, but it's not going to be didactic. It's going to be done in a way that you have no idea you're learning how important it is to never give up, which is something my father would say to me when I played tennis, and I'm down a set. Don't give up. Or my grandparents would, my grandmother used to say things like, dishwater gives back no images. And I was like, well, what does that mean? I have no idea what you're talking about. But I was like, yes, Grandma. Right? But, so I'm learning all these things. And so when I got to a point in my life where I began to accept this responsibility and be accountable for trying to make better human beings, I knew I was going to sort of add my little Kwame flavor to it. And so instead of, hey, don't give up, kids, it became dribble, fake, shoot, miss. Dribble, fake, shoot, miss. Dribble, fake, shoot, miss. Dribble, fake, shoot, swish. So on the surface, he's got rhymes, he's got bars, and that's cool, it's entertaining. But when you get beneath that surface, when you get to the substance, it's about teaching. It's about teaching you how to be resilient and how to never give up. I mentioned that my father was a Baptist preacher. So I grew up in the church as a preacher's kid. And so part of that experience is not listening to the sermon because you're playing with your friends and getting scolded, and you're hoping your dad doesn't look at you, because if he looks at you, if he eyes you from the pulpit, then you better stop. Part of that experience is Sunday school, where you're actually doing the most learning as a kid, where it's targeted. And it's fun and interesting. They're making it fun and an engaging experience to learn about the Bible, to learn about your faith. Part of that experience is the hot buttered yeast rolls after church that Miss Woody used to make in the cafeteria. And she always gave you like a pan. They were 25 cents a roll. But the butter used to, Part of that experience were your friends who you shared this relationship to your spirituality, to faith with, even though you couldn't articulate it or didn't articulate it. They were your friends. And a big part of it was the music. It was the choir. Like, you paid attention. Like when that sister sang that solo, you listened. You couldn't help but listen. And you felt something. It moved through you. So that was a part of my life. It just was. When I think of, growing up in Crown Heights, in Brooklyn, New York, in 1975, 76, 77, it was the origins of hip hop. So I wanted to be a rapper. My buddy was a DJ, he had a turntable, and I was the rapper. He's the DJ, I'm the rapper. And I couldn't rap. I thought I could. I believed I could. Batman, Superman had a fight. Batman hit him with some kryptonite. The kryptonite must have shocked his brain, because now he thinks he's Lois Lane. I didn't write that, but that was just sort of the style. But you talked in a way that had a rhythm and a rhyme to it, if you were cool. I talked about reading Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes' poetry is the blues, is jazz inspired. So music has always been a part of the lives of Black Americans in general. It's what we carried over the Atlantic Ocean. It's what we brought with us. It's how we got over. It's how we survived. It's that musicality in our souls that we voiced. Imagine, trying to go to sleep at night or feeling a little sad as a child. What does your mom do? Sings you a lullaby. Why? Because it soothes you, because it calms you, because it helps, place you on solid ground. The last year we lived in Brooklyn, it was 1978, and my father was the headmaster of my school, which is the worst thing ever. I went to a school called Uhuru Sasa Shule. That's Swahili. Swahili is the East African language. By the way, we're in the African room at the Kennedy Center. How apropos. Uhuru Sasa Shule, that's a Swahili phrase. It means, Uhuru means freedom, Sasa means now, Shule means school. I went to a school called Freedom Now School. It's pretty obvious what they were trying to train us up to become, people who were invested and committed to the idea of freedom, justice, and equality. So that's where I went to school, and so I think I'm 10 at the time, and one day my father says, "We're not going to school." I'm like, "Okay, cool." He said, "Instead, we're going to march over the Brooklyn Bridge." I'm like, "No, I'm not marching. Sorry," because the climate in Brooklyn in the 70s was brutal, was tense for Black people. And a Black man had just been killed by police officers in Crown Heights. His name was Arthur Miller, not the playwright, obviously. And so there was a march scheduled by Reverend Herbert Daughtry, a local activist. And we were gonna march over the Brooklyn Bridge to protest police brutality and the killing of this Black man. No way I was gonna do it, because in my mind, I believed they were gonna open the bridge and we were all gonna fall in and die. The Brooklyn Bridge doesn't open. But this is what I felt. So I cried, I hid, I was like, I'm not doing it. And my father forced me to go, and I'm crying the whole time we're marching over the bridge. And we get to the other side, and I remember the police officers on their horses, they're in riot gear, and I'm just scared. And what happens? We're fired up, we can't take no more. We're fired up, we can't take no more. And everybody starts singing, my dad singing, I'm singing this chant. And what does it do? Well, I stop crying. Well, I'm on solid ground. I'm grounded. I feel like I'm in control of my soul. How I got over that bridge through song. It is a part of my life. It is not something that I, sort of consciously, I consciously, listen to instrumental jazz music when I'm writing. Before I go on stage in front of 1,000 kids, I'll listen to some fast techno dance music, because I know that music is that thing that is going to help me get over. So it finds its way in every aspect of my life. And I don't know how it is for other cultures and other communities. I would imagine that that song played a role in how mothers and grandmothers comforted their children in the concentration camps. I would imagine that song, that chant, played a role in how mothers and grandmothers comforted and consoled their children when their land was being taken by Europeans here in this place we call America. I would imagine that song is that thing, that music is that element that reminds us that we matter, that we are human beings, no matter what external other people are saying. So all that stuff infuses its way and finds its way into a poem that I'm writing. The melody, the refrain, the chorus, the beat. So like in The Crossover, it's about two brothers, Josh and JB. They are twin brothers. You can tell them apart because one has long locks and one has no hair. And one day the brother with no hair says, I'm gonna bet you that if I make the last shot in the game, I get to cut off all your hair. And the brother's like, if my hair were a tree, I'd climb it. I'd kneel down beneath and enshrine it. I'd treat it like gold and then mine it. Each day before school, I unwind it. And right before games, I entwine it. These locks on my head, I designed it. And one last thing, if you don't mind it, that bet you just made, I decline it. I think the musicality just finds its way in everything that I do because it is in everything that I am. I went to college to become a doctor. I was sort of fed up with literature. As a kid, and for 16 years, it had just been everything. And I wanted to try something else, so I was gonna be a pediatrician. Doctors can't write. They don't have to write. I can make a little money. I loved interacting with people. I'll be a pediatrician. So I studied biochemistry at Virginia Tech. And sophomore year, two things happened that just changed my life. One was organic chemistry. And I struggled to get a C-. I said, wow, this is gonna be tough. And the second was Nikki Giovanni became a professor at Virginia Tech. And I had read Nikki Giovanni as a kid. I had been exposed to her books. My sister was named after a poem in Nikki Giovanni's Spin a Soft Black Song. My sister's name is Nataki. So when Nikki Giovanni came to Tech, I said, wow, the princess of black poetry is coming to Blacksburg. This is it. Maybe I'm gonna change my major and go back to this thing that I know, my comfort zone, which is writing. And I took her first course sort of with that, cocky energy, I'm the greatest, Plus I already know you from your books. So I've found my place until she gave me a C. And that was problematic for me. And I had a little bit of an issue with it, and I let her know that. I wrote her a letter, and she wrote me a letter back. The next year, I took another course from her. The first year, I took advanced poetry. She gave me the C. The second year, I took Introduction to Children's Literature, just because I thought it'd be an easy class. And it was Nikki Giovanni. And she gave me another C. And this time, I was livid. So I didn't know, do you know who I am? And so I went and met with her in her office, and she said to me, Kwame, I can teach you how to write, but I can't teach you how to be interesting. Those are fighting words. And then she politely escorted me out. By the way, Nikki and I to this day differ, or our remembrance of this whole interaction is quite different, which we laugh about now. So the third year, I took another course called Introduction to Black Studies. And I feel like it's possible I got another C. And so that was sort of the beginning of my writing career, being told by this writer who you admire it tremendously that you're average. Now, conventional wisdom for most people would say that, you know, you're probably not going to pursue that, especially someone of that sort of, you know, stature, literary stature. But I ended up doing something that I'm not too proud of. I spoke out against Nikki Giovanni after receiving that third C in a way that the word got back to her. And I said some pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? I said some pretty mean stuff. I was 18, I was 19, I was hurt. My ego was shattered. And I proceeded to continue writing, and I graduated Virginia Tech, and I wrote a couple books, self-published them myself because no one would publish them. They didn't think the poetry was that good, but of course I'm the greatest. And so you can't tell me 100 rejections, it doesn't matter. From journals and magazines, I'm gonna publish it myself. Because of course I knew how to publish because I worked for my dad. So I'd asked my dad for a loan. He gave me his check for $1,700. And he said, good luck. And I remember when I published my second book, I was reading poetry in different churches and libraries and at subway stops. And I went to a conference in Harrisonburg, Virginia at James Madison. It was a poetry conference. And I bought a table for $25. This was my first sort of table where I was manning. I stood up behind it, I didn't eat. You know, I knew how to stack the books because I had been scolded so many times and how the book needed to be presented on the table. And I was selling my poetry books for $10. It was a book of questionable love poems. And it was a 3-day conference and I sold maybe 50 books. I remember at the end of the conference, I had a few books left and I was about to leave and this woman comes up to me and she says, can I buy your last 2 books? And I said, sure, it's $20. And I look up and it's Nikki Giovanni. And I'm thinking, this is interesting because we parted ways years ago and I never talked to her and we didn't like each other at all by the end of that journey. And she said, congratulations, and she left. I didn't think too much of it. And then a few years later, I had written, another book. Maybe this is like 5 years later, and I wrote a book of another book of love poems called Crush. And I was in a place called St. Louis, Missouri, to perform at a jazz club. And I was in the Adams Mark Hotel, and I wake up in the morning, my paper's at the door, I get my newspaper, and there's an article in me in the paper, and in the article it says, quote, Kwame Alexander is my literary son, unquote, end of quote, Nikki Giovanni. I'm like, well, this is interesting. Why is she saying that? We don't like each other. I don't understand. And so I said, well, maybe I should write her a note and thank her. So I write her a note and thank her. She writes back, congratulations. I was in St. Louis. I saw you were going to be there. Maybe about 2 years later, I get a letter in the mail. And we're like 10 years after Virginia Tech. And it says, Kwame, I'm writing and I'd never been published by anyone else. I'd self-published maybe 9 books by now. She says, Kwame, I'm writing a book for Henry Holt. It's called Grandfathers. Would you like to be in my book? If so, submit a poem. Like, why is she? We don't like each other. And so I write a 5-page poem employing everything I've ever learned about how to write poetry, the best thing I could ever write, most of which I learned in her class. I don't hear anything back. And I'm thinking this was a setup. This is another C. She's about to just diss me. And then I get a letter in the mail and it says, Kwame, congratulations, your poem will be published in my anthology, and here's a check for $50. This could have been $5,000. This was everything to me. And this is the point where I begin to say, oh snap, maybe I was a bit harsh at Virginia Tech. So now I'm writing letters to friends of hers, telling them, please let Nikki know I'm sorry, because I'm afraid to tell her. I see her at another conference. We exchange pleasantries, we talk a little bit. I send her copies of my next books, books 10 and 11. She writes me notes. We're writing letters every now and then. And then in 2005, we're talking about 15 years after Virginia Tech, I have been laid off from maybe 10 jobs and had 10 other jobs, whether it be the Department of Housing and Urban Development or a radio station or a graphic designer or proposal coordinator. I've had so many different jobs, and what I really want to do is just write for a living, but nobody wants to publish me, and I'm publishing myself, and I'm making a little bit of money, but not enough to take care of a family. So I'm married with a kid. And what I really would like to do is speak. I feel like I have something to say, and I love reading poetry. If I could just get a gig speaking somewhere at a conference and be paid for it. 2005, 2006, 2005, I get a letter from the New York State English Council. It's an organization that has as its members all the English teachers in the state of New York. 800 English teachers. Kwame Alexander, we'd love for you to be the keynote speaker at our annual convention in Albany, New York. We can only pay you $2,000. What? That's like a year's salary to me. Yes, I accept. I go there, I do my speech, it's standing room only. I get a standing ovation. My books sell out. Teachers start asking me to come to their schools. We'll pay you, come speak to our kids. So I asked the organizer, how'd you hear about me? Oh, we had another speaker who was booked, but she had to cancel, and she recommended you, Nikki Giovanni. So now I'm thinking, whoa. So I call her, I get her number, and we have a nice talk, and I thank her profusely. And neither one of us says anything about what happened at Virginia Tech. And then we begin to have dinner every month. When we see each other, we run into each other in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm going to speak at a conference. I'm in my hotel, I'm getting on the elevator, and she's on the elevator. We're like, what? We end up having dinner, and Nikki loves to talk. And I had just gotten off a plane, I had jet lag, and we talked for 5 hours in the restaurant. So now we're sort of friendly. We're friends. We're hanging out. I'm going to her house, having dinner. And it's 2000, maybe 11. So now we're 20 plus years after Virginia Tech. And she calls and she says, Kwame, you gotta come here. My mother died. You gotta come over and we gotta drink beer. I say, okay. And she says her mother's favorite drink was beer. So she wants to celebrate her mom by drinking the most expensive beer in the world. which is called Utopias. It's brewed by Sam Adams. Maybe they brew 150 or 300 bottles a year. And it's $300 a bottle. And I don't drink beer, but I say, okay, I'll be there. And she goes to her local guy and he can't get it. And so she's talking about her newest book on NPR and she mentions that she can't find Utopias. And when she gets back to her house, there's a case of Utopias that Sam Adams sent her. So she says, Kwame, I got the stuff. You gotta come over. So I drive from DC. It's about a 4-hour drive to her house. I get there, we have grilled tuna, we have Brussels sprouts. First time I've ever had Brussels sprouts in my life, loved them. And we had scalloped potatoes. Sitting around the table, eating. And then about midnight, we break out the Utopias. And it's good. It's like brandy. And it's in a gold flask. It's gorgeous. And we're having a blast. We're really happy. And then about 2 a.m. it hits me and I start crying. And I say, Nikki, I'm so sorry about everything I did and said at Virginia Tech. I don't know what I was thinking. And she looks at me and she's crying too because I'm crying. But then her cry turns into laughter. And she's laughing and she's like, Kwame, I have no idea what you're talking about. She said, whatever I did at Virginia Tech was to help you become a better man, was to help you become who you needed to be, was to help you become the writer you were supposed to be. And then about a year later, we travel to Ghana, West Africa together, and then we go again, and we're building a library in a village, and we're as close as ever. And in 2017, 27 years after I left Virginia Tech, my mother dies. And I call her and I let her know, and I say, just wanted to let you know. And she says, well, let me know when the funeral is. And one thing I know about Nikki is she doesn't go to funerals. She's not a funeral person. And I say, okay, but I'm not gonna let her know because I know she doesn't go and I don't want to put that pressure on her. And the funeral's on a Friday, and on Thursday night she calls me, she says, Kwame, I'm in town, I'm at the hotel, and I'll see you tomorrow. And I say, what are you doing here? And it's the first time she's ever used a certain kind of language in 27 years with me. And she says, what are you talking about? Of course I'm going to be there. You have to know you still have a mother. When I think about my life becoming a writer and a lover of words, my parents introduced me to the power of words. And Nikki showed me how to use them, how to make them dance on the page. I mean, I am who I am because of them. And so this journey from Virginia Tech, it's like my parents handed the baton to her and she took it. And in the midst of me not even wanting to grab it, she hung in there. She did what every teacher is supposed to do. Education, teaching is sacred work. We have the capacity to build and nurture beautiful human beings or destroy them. She said she gave me the C because she knew I needed the C. My parents were my first librarians, but every city we were in, libraries played a huge part in our Saturday mornings, in our after schools. When I was a toddler to about 10 years old, it was the Brooklyn Public Library. When I was in middle and high school, it was the Chesapeake Public Library. So in Brooklyn, my mom would take us to the library on Saturdays. We'd do story time and that kind of thing. In Chesapeake, Virginia, when we moved to Virginia, I would go to the Chesapeake Public Library after school to hang out with my friends, to sneak over to the 808 sections. You know what the 808 is? Nobody knows what you gotta know what the 808s are. The 808s are the poetry section. The 808s are the poetry section. I would sneak over to the 808s because, poetry wasn't cool, but it was cool to me. I loved poetry. My friends didn't think it was cool. Folks, birthing is hard and dying is mean, so why not get yourself a little loving in between? I mean, right? But I'm not gonna, recite that with my middle and high school friends. That was Langston Hughes. And I would meet girls, or try to meet girls in the library, because they'd be studying and I'd be eyeing them. After college, it was, a combination of the Herndon Public Library, the Charleston, South Carolina Public Library, the Greensboro, North Carolina Public Library, the Prince William County Public Library. And these were libraries where I'd go to write, where I'd go to work on my books. The first 13 books of which I published myself. Fast forward a couple years, I'm at Washington National Airport, Reagan National Airport. They're having the annual having a poetry month event, and I'm the MC. So all the trustees or the board members, board of directors, the Washington Metropolitan Airports Authority are at the luncheon that we're having. And it's me, it's the woman who gave me my first job out of college. Her name is Juanita Britton, because she runs several airport stores like Brooks Brothers and so forth. And it's Nikki Giovanni. And so all of us are in this luncheon. And I remember it was fettuccine Alfredo with shrimp. I remember my foods. So we're having lunch, and in the middle of the lunch, Juanita Britton, who gave me my first job out of college, she says, Kwame, you want to go to Africa? Huh? I mean, do you want to come to Ghana with me? And I'd never been to Africa. So Nikki screams across the table, yes, he wants to go. Okay. We're leaving in 3 weeks. Apparently, she would be becoming the queen mother of a village in the eastern region of Ghana, in a village called Kanko. So of course I had a passport. I had to get a visa, and in 3 weeks, I flew to Africa for the first time, to West Africa. And I'm going because she's going to become a queen mother, and there's a big ceremony where she gets a stool. Kings in Ghana have, their thrones are golden stools. So it's an installment ceremony. That doesn't sound very cool, but that's what it is. It's a Durbar ceremony where she gets her stool. So she wants me to come and document it. So it's my first time in Africa. I'm getting off the plane. I'm going straight to the village for the ceremony. They'll be waiting for me. So I have on these really cool white linen pants. I have on these brown sandals. I get off the plane. The heat punches me in the face. It just knocks me over. It's so hot. I get in the taxi. 2-hour ride to the village. And it starts pouring rain. We turn off the main road onto this crater-filled red dirt road. It's 3 miles of this in this pouring rain. And we get to the village, and I see the tents and everyone sitting under it, and the taxi pulls into the middle, right in the middle of this ceremony that's going to take place. And I guess they're waiting on me. I see the queen mother sitting in her chair. So I get out of the taxi in my white linen pants, and I step into a vat of mud. And now my sandals and feet are covered, and my pants are brown down here. So some guys come over. I go sit in a chair, some guys come over, clean my pants, roll my pants up, take my shoes and clean them, clean my feet, and then I put my sandals back on, and the ceremony starts. And it's just otherworldly. By this point, I'd been to probably 3 or 4 continents, 3 continents. This will be my 4th. Go to the hotel. The next morning, the Queen Mother wants me to come and read to the children. Okay. So I get to the school, and it's a huge structure that has no ceiling and no walls and no desk. And the kids are sitting on the dirt. And there's a blackboard with a computer drawn on it. And I'm like, what's that for? We teach computer technology. We don't have laptops. We teach it through Simulate. We draw it. So they want me to read to the kids. So all the kids are sitting down, and I'm like, hello. And they're like, I say, hello, how are you? We are fine. And you? In complete harmony and unison. I'm fine. Very good. So then I start reading from the book I think is going to really be cool, and it's my newest book, and I'm excited about it. And it's called Acoustic Rooster and His Barnyard Band. And I kid you not, Miles Davis led a trio that featured 3 cool cats. Ella Fitzgerald, and I'm reading, and I kid you not, a rooster walks up beside me. And I'm thinking, okay, this is perfect. This is what it was supposed to be. And I read, and then I finish, and the kids are into it, and they want more. But that's the only book I brought to read. And so I asked one of the teachers, can you bring me a book from the library? I'll read anything. And she brings me the computer technology book. I'm like, nah, bring me a kid's book. We don't have any more books. Do you have a library? No, we don't have a library. They have no other books in the school but this one book for 200 kids. And so in that moment, I decide I'm going to build a library. This is 2012. So I come back with some amazing friends in the fall. David Miller, Tracy Charles McGee, Lindsay, Renee, and Ed. And the 6 of us go back, and we take about 1,000 books, which we've been collecting over the summer. And we go back, and we buy some timber and nails and hammer. They have a closet somewhere in the village that we're going to use as a library. So the men in the village work with us, and we all build these bookshelves, place them in the closet, put the books on the shelf, feeling it. Come back the next year, the closet is pretty much a storage. It's all dusty and stuff. And the books are all dusty, and I'm like, okay, well, I really want to do something. I want to build a legit library. So I start raising money. Teachers and educators and writers from across the country, people I've met in my travels, and we raise about $40,000. So I'm sending money over. We've identified the plot of land in the village. The Queen Mother's sort of helping me oversee this, and they're building this library. And so it's 2017. And the pictures have been looking great, and this thing's gonna be done. So I take 19 writer educators to Ghana, and we're gonna have the ribbon cutting for this library. Got about 5,000 books, which were all taken over in different bags. And so we get there, and we check into the hotel, and I go to the village because I want to just check on everything to make sure everything's cool for the next day's ribbon cutting. So I get to the village, I go to the library, and there's no roof on it. And there's no furniture, and there's no flooring. The library is like 40, 50% complete. And so now I'm stressing out. So I have them paint the columns, have them put some sort of aluminum something on the top. And I say, we're gonna have a ribbon cutting tomorrow for phase 1. So everyone comes, we have this amazing ribbon cutting. I'm stressed because it was supposed to be opening. We had all these books. We had to end up putting books in that storage room. So I talked to the villagers, the elders in the village, the council of elders. And I'm like, what's up? I wasn't that disrespectful. Please tell me what happened. Why isn't the library open? Oh, Kwame, it is okay. It will be okay. No, it's not okay. I brought all these people. It's supposed to be open. Oh, do not worry. It will be open. Well, did you not want the library? He looks at me and says, we could have used a health clinic. And of course, that was the aha moment that I had gone over with my Western intentions of good and never asked what they wanted. And so my mother passed away a month later, and the next summer we opened the Barbara Alexander Memorial Library and Health Clinic. So, I'm still learning. I'm still traveling, and I'm still learning. So libraries have always played a huge role in my development as a writer in particular, but as a human being in general. And of course, culminating in 2015, when 14 librarians chose the crossover as the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. Those librarians, took my career to a whole nother level. We're gonna start with me at 12 years old deciding I'm gonna be an actor and performing in a play called The Chosen that was directed by a woman named Consuelo Lee Moorhead, who had the distinction of being Spike Lee's aunt. We performed the play in Norfolk. I was one of the stars, and it ended up going off-Broadway. And so I performed off-Broadway at 12. Loved it. So I've always been on stage. Fast forward to Virginia Tech, my minor is theater, and I'm auditioning for plays, and I'm not being casted. Well, I thought I was good. Again, I thought I could write too. But I took it as, oh, y'all aren't really casting black actors. So rather than complain, I've always been about how do we rectify this situation. So I started writing plays at Virginia Tech to perform. Last year at college, the National Black Arts Festival was founded. It's a huge Black Arts Festival in Atlanta, Georgia, of artists from all around the world of African descent. And I got accepted as a student fellowship. And I went down and studied, acting and writing with Charles Fuller, who wrote A Soldier's Story, A Soldier's Play, and then eventually A Soldier's Story, the movie, with Denzel. Douglas Turner Ward, who started the Negro Ensemble Company, where so many black actors got their start, and Cicely Tyson, who just recently passed away. So I'm immersed in the theater. So Douglas Turner Ward, this big time director on Broadway and off Broadway, says, would I be interested in, no, I go up to him and say, do you have any internships available? I'm like 18 or 19. He says, yeah. So I end up getting an acting internship at the Negro Ensemble Company in New York City for the summer. And I'm gonna be casted in a play. I'm playing the dead man, but I'm gonna be in the play. I'm getting paid $100 a week or something, and they're paying for my house or my flat. I've been living in London too long. My apartment. It doesn't work out. My father won't let me go because they're going to put me in some sort of closet, rat-infested closet. That's how actors live, whatever. But he's not going to let me do it. Graduate from Virginia Tech. I moved to Arlington, Virginia. I started a theater company. It's called Staged Black, Staged Black. Members of this theater, and we're working out of the Carver Community Center off of Columbia Pike in Arlington, Virginia. There's a beautiful theater that hadn't been used in like 50 years, and it's dusty and dirty, and they allow me to come in and just clean it out, and that's our home. So people in this theater company are Tony Blackman, who would later become the U.S. Department of State's first hip-hop ambassador to the world. Ananda Lewis, who ended up becoming a talk show host and an MTV VJ. So we were all like in our youth, in our prime, starting out. So started this theater company, performing plays by Langston Hughes, all original stuff, and get a grant from Arlington's, I think the Washington Post called it the Kennedy Center across the river. It was Arlington's Cultural Affairs Incubator Program, the Gunston Arts Center. So I get a grant for $750. Yes, I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna be able to do everything. So anyway, we do a bunch of plays. There's no money in theater, especially small theater. And after 3 years, I'm just like, this is not gonna work. I need to get a job. And so I give that up. Fast forward about 5 years, Arlington gives me another grant for $7,500. I write a play called The Seventh Son about Tupac Shakur. It's staged at the Rosalind Spectrum Theater. It runs for 2 weeks. The Post gives me a great review. Nelson Presley gives me a great review. All right, so I'm back in theater. And then that lasts for maybe 6 months, and I'm done with that. So I say all this to say, I have this rich history in live theater. And so after the crossover wins the Newbery Medal in 2015, I started getting approached by Hollywood and also by Broadway. And so Steve Nash, NBA All-Star, and his producing partner they want to do the crossover on Broadway. So I've had sort of my tentacles in this space, right? So I'm thinking of theater. I'm thinking in theatrical terms. In 2010, my daughter was 2 years old. She was born in 2008, and I was laid off from a job, and my wife was working, and my daughter would be crying a lot, and I didn't know how to get her to stop crying, so I'd put on Ella Fitzgerald. And I'd play Ella Fitzgerald, and my daughter would stop crying. It's like, ooh, this is great. Jazz does it, or Ella's voice does it. So I'd tell her who Ella was. I talked to her about Miles Davis. And so then I decided, well, maybe I should write something for her, a poem or about jazz music, about the history of it. There was a fellowship in Bahia, in Brazil, that I applied to. And I had a recommendation from Nikki Giovanni. It was 3 months on the beach with a chef writing. And I needed this. This was what I needed. And I figured I would get this. And I didn't get the fellowship. And I was devastated. Until I decided I was going to start my own fellowship. And I called it the Kwame Alexander International Fellowship. And I didn't have any money, but I invited 8 writer educators that I knew from around the States that I had encountered over time, and sent them each letters and said, you've been invited to the Kwame Alexander International Fellowship, all expense paid, at a villa in Italy. You just have to get there for 3 weeks. I had a friend in Tuscany. She found a villa for me. I somehow raised the money, booked it, and the 9 of us flew over to Tuscany. And in a small village called Ortamino. And this is how my 3 weeks went. Because we were all going to write, to work on a project. Week 1, I wake up, I walk to the cafe at the end of the road. It's a long gravel road. Get croissant, have some tea, come back, do some reading, take a nap, wake up, big meal, the chef prepares lunch, we eat outside, dip in the pool, take a nap, wake up, laugh, talk to the other writers, have a huge 5-course meal. After dinner, dance, laugh, drink, grape juice, and hang out. No writing for 1 week. But I'm having a good time, being inspired. I'm pre-writing. Second week, same thing. Reading, napping, eating, laughing, dancing, meeting the local townsfolk, swimming, hanging out. Beginning of week 3, wake up, walk the gravel road to the cafe. I look over to the right when I get to the end of the driveway, and there's a coop, a chicken coop. It's a little farm. And on these coop are these chickens, and they're running around. They're being chased by this rooster with this big old red beak. I'm like, wow, what is that rooster doing? Maybe they're playing tag. No, they're having a party. If these roosters are having a party, they're having a party, there's gotta be music. Oh, if there's music at the party, it's gonna be live music. Is it a DJ? No, it's not a DJ, it's a band. It's a jazz band. See how this is coming full circle now? It's a jazz band. And of course, that week, I write the first draft of Acoustic Rooster and his Barnyard Band. Acoustic Rooster sat outside strumming his bass guitar. He practiced jazz all summer long so he could be a star. Now, every year about this time, Farmer announced his plan to hold a barnyard talent show and find the farm's best band. Acoustic Rooster asked to join Thelonious Monkey's crew, but Farmer's rules prevented that because they lived at the zoo. So I'm like, I think I'm onto something. So I write this children's picture book about a rooster that started the jazz band with Duck Ellington and Mules Davis and Thelonious Monkey and Ella Fitzgerald and B. Holiday. And I end up getting a book deal. It's my first book deal by a publisher. The previous books I published myself. So this is 2011, my first deal, and I think I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna be like Mo Willems. I don't need a job. And my royalty, I think my advance check is like $3,000 or $4,000, and it's like, I'm not gonna be rich. I gotta find a job. But I ended up selling books at the local farmer's market in Reston, Virginia, because I was laid off. So I remember the first time I went out, I had 100 books. And of course, I'm standing behind the table, I'm not eating. The book, I love how this is all coming together, right? The books are stacked up. I got a bale of hay. I got John Coltrane playing, and I got a t-shirt that says, "Got Rooster." And people are walking up, pushing strollers. Oh, what's this? And I'm reciting the book, and they're buying books. And the first day I was there, I paid $50 for the table. I sold 100 books, $16.99 per book. I got $1,700 in my sock. My dad used to keep money in his socks when we travel. I get back home, my wife says, "How'd you do?" I said, "Honey, I made $800. I told her the truth. So I do farmers markets for the next 18 months, Eastern Market. Because again, I'm laid off. Olney Market. All these farmers markets in the district of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Because who comes to farmers markets? Families and with kids. So I'm selling a lot of books. and teachers are seeing me and they're inviting me to come and read my books to their kids. And one of my other jobs was to produce book festivals. And one of the things I decided to do was that each book festival, I'm giving away a free book that I'm going to publish. So in 2010, I self-published a book called Indigo Bloom in the Garden City, about a little girl who builds a rooftop garden to help her city go green. So these two children's picture books sort of, collide, and I'm having this conversation as a result of Mo Willems, who's a Kennedy Center artist in residence, mentioning me to the Kennedy Center. You all should get in touch with Kwame. The Kennedy Center gets in touch with me. We have a conversation. What are you all looking to do? What are you interested in? So everything sort of like happens and the stars align, and that's really how in Acoustic Roosters, Barnyard Boogie, starring Indigo Bloom, how it all came into fruition. It's a combination of me being in love with theater, having some experience in it, having great friends, interacting with amazing writers like Mo, and saying yes to what's possible. And once, I decided that's what, this project would be that I would bring to the Kennedy Center, I got on board with my amazing writing friends, Mary Rand Hess, Randy Preston, who we've been going to writers' retreats for the past couple years, 5 years or so, and we decided to write this thing together. From the time I wrote Acoustic Rooster, I always envisioned that this thing had legs. This was a way to teach kids about music. This was a way to teach social emotional learning. This was a love letter to jazz musicians, most of whom were Black, several of whom died broke, or tragically. This was an American history project. This is a big part of American history. Jazz sounds like the beginning of a poem. Actually it is. The Last Poets have a poem where they say jazz is. So jazz is, as Wynton Marsalis said, is a metaphor for democracy. You've got these five musicians, or four musicians in a quartet or a trio. You've got these musicians on stage, and they each have to do their thing. They each have to play their part for the benefit of the song, of the piece, of the art, of this one thing, America. They each got to play their part. Now, at some point during this journey, somebody's gonna have to have their turn to shine. They're gonna have to solo. And the rest of us are gonna have to stand back and let them do their thing. And be patient and support and encourage and cheer. And then they're gonna step back and we're gonna get our chance. And then another person. Jazz is a metaphor for democracy. I write about the things that matter to me. My goal is, how do I make my personal your business? That's the goal. Because otherwise, it's just me talking about the stuff that I care about with no intent to involve you. And that's the goal. To involve, to engage, to inspire, and ultimately empower you in a way that you can do something, feel something, be something that you weren't before you encountered it. We're trying to teach something that is going to help us all become better human beings. That's at the root of it. You don't have to be able to articulate it as the reader or the viewer. I just need you to experience it. And I think what Mary and Randy and I have tried to do here is that. When I think of what the theme of the show is, it comes down to the theme of pretty much everything I guess I do is believe in yourself. Be a star in your mind, day and night. Let it shine. I am the greatest, not because I am better than anyone, but because no one is better than me.